nothing but the truth.
इन 77 मुस्लिम जातियों को नौकरी में, पढ़ाई में, हर जगह मलाई मिल रही थी। ऐसा करके इंडी गठबंधन ने ओबीसी के हक पर डाका डाल दिया। ऐसा करके इन लोगों ने संविधान की धज्जियां उड़ा दी।
संविधान से रिजर्वेशन निकलता है, संविधान से चुनाव होते हैं, लोकतंत्र निकलता है, पब्लिक सेक्टर आता है, हरी क्रांति होती है, सफेद क्रांति होती है, टेलीकॉम रेवोल्यूशन होता है, मनरेगा, जो भी आपको मिला है वो इस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने आपको दिया है। और ये हिंदुस्तान के गरीब लोगों की मेहनत से बना है, इसलिए इसको हम कभी नहीं मिटने देंगे।
Why did the caste quota become the most acrimonious and polarizing issue in election 2024? What impact will it have on the final outcome when results are announced on June 4th? Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa from India Today, and in this episode of Nothing But the Truth, we will analyze the politics of reservations and its impact on election 2024. But first, an explainer about reservations based on caste and community in India. Even during the British rule, there were reservations for government jobs, for backward castes and tribes. But after independence, the Constitution of India paved the way for such reservations to be continued by laying them down in several articles of the Constitution. The first set was the exceptions made in Article 15 of the Constitution, which prohibits discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. Another exception was made to Article 29, which protects the minorities and states that any citizen of India that has a distinct language, script, or culture of its own shall have the right to conserve it. The exceptions to these articles comes in Article 15, Clause 4, which in the Constitution, which says, nothing in Article 15 or in Clause 2 of Article 29 shall prevent the state from making any special provision for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, and this includes the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. Then again, Article 16, which prohibits discrimination in government employment, has an exception in Clause 4 that states, nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any provision for the reservation of appointments of posts in favor of any backward class of citizens, which in the opinion of the state is not adequately represented in the services under the state. Further, there is another article, Article 46 of the Constitution, that extends that reservation to educational institutions by stating that, and I'm quoting it, the state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interests of the weaker sections of the people, and in particular the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes, and shall protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. So, the Constitution did lay down plenty of provisions that permitted reservations for the socio-economically weaker sections of the society, and initially the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes that historically were the most vulnerable and discriminated sections of the society got the benefit of these provisions. Apart from reservations of constituencies in parliament and state legislatures, the scheduled castes were given 15% and scheduled tribes 7.5% reservation in government jobs and government educational institutions. This was applicable for both central and state sector jobs and institutions. Their reservation quota was roughly proportionate to the population of the scheduled castes and tribes across the country. So essentially it was through population reservation that 15% for scheduled castes and 7.5% for scheduled tribes was determined. Now together, these two sections were given a reservation of 22.5%. Reservation of other backward classes or OBCs came later when the Mandal Commission for Economically and Socially Backward Classes, which was formed in 1979, had submitted its report in 1980. Now, at that time, there was no caste census done after independence, And the Mandal Commission relied on the 1931 caste census, which put the population of the other backward classes or OBCs at 52%. On the basis of that census, the Mandal Commission advised the government, the then government, when it gave its recommendations, that OBCs should be given 27% reservations in government jobs and educational institutions. This meant that along with the SC and ST, the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and the OBCs, the total would amount to 49.5%. This was the ceiling that the Mandal Commission had imposed, saying totally the reservation should come up to 50%, 27% will go to OBCs, and of course, the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes each had 15 plus 7.5, that made 22.5, so we had a total of 49.5%. Now, though the Mandal Commission report was filed in 1980, it was such a hot potato that only in 1990 did the VP Singh government decide to implement the provisions of the Mandal Commission report. Now, this caused widespread agitation, especially from the other castes, and the act was challenged in the Supreme Court in what is now known as the Indira Sawhney case. In 1992, the Supreme Court upheld the quota for the OBCs of 27%, but put a ceiling for all such reservations, including the SC and ST, to 50%. They said no more than 50%, anything below that is fine, but you cannot do any more reservations on that basis. Of course, there is one more act we need to take cognizance of to understand the reservations issue, and this is in 2019, and this was to address the discontent among other caste groups that were not entitled for reservations, and the Modi government in 2019 passed a constitutional amendment, and this allotted a further 10% reservation for the economically weaker sections from the unreserved classes for government jobs and educational institutions. Now, the Supreme Court upheld that act in 2022, and this amendment pushed the total reservations to 59.5%. Now, that gives you a picture of how reservations and caste quotas came into effect, what was the total that was there, what were the issues that were involved, how it has been, in many senses, provisions have been made in the Constitution, how those provisions have been applied in the last 75 years or so since independence. Now, let's move quickly to 2023, which is last year, which will answer the question that I've raised as to why reservations has become such a contentious and acrimonious issue in election 2024. As I had mentioned earlier, the OBCs were always unhappy that they were given only 27% quota, which was not really representative of their population, which many, and they also believed, exceeded 50%, which was based on the 1931 caste census. Their demand for quota justice grew with greater urgency after the Bihar government, headed by Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, released the findings of a state-level caste survey in October 2023. Now, that caste survey was very revealing. It found that the OBCs, the other backward classes, constituted as much as 63.14% of the state's population. So, subsequently, the Nitish government passed 2 amendments, raising the state's caste-based quota from 50% to 65%, as this, as you know, is a breach, or was in breach of the Supreme Court ceiling. In November 2023, just a month later, the Bihar government requested the central government to include the 2 amended laws in the 9th schedule of the Constitution to shield them from judicial review. Now, this was a provision that protected, soon after the 1992 Supreme Court judgment, that protected even Tamil Nadu, which had an overall 69% quota that it had enjoyed since 1994. It went into the 9th schedule and therefore was permitted because there was no judicial review permitted under that 9th schedule if it was there. Bihar tried for it, but there has so far been no response from the center. Now, Nitish Kumar had passed these amendments when he had broken his alliance with the Bharatiya Janata Party or the BJP and teamed up in a stunning development with the Rashtriya Janata Dal to form a new government in 2022. Nitish Kumar had become the fulcrum, if you recall, of the India bloc, which had most of the major parties, including the Congress, as part of it. The India Bloc is the Indian National Development and Inclusive Alliance. That's the expansion of the acronym. And the bloc decided to make the demand for a national caste census and also to increase reservations for the OBC as one of its major planks. This was to counter the move or the BJP's move to push the Hindutva agenda and their quest, the BJP's party quest to ensure a monolithic Hindu vote, especially with the consecration of the Ram temple that happened early this year. Meanwhile, even as the India Bloc proposed this, other states and their parties began to pick up the agenda, or the reservation agenda, either by implementing or promising to implement or conducting a similar survey. This included Odisha, Karnataka, Telangana, and Maharashtra, just to name a few. Now, in Maharashtra, there was an earlier demand from the Marathas to be included in the OBC list, and this agitation now exploded. With the India Bloc's reservation agenda gaining traction, the BJP then moved swiftly to counter it. In a major political coup, the BJP got Nitish Kumar to rejoin its alliance in January this year, and this was just 3 months before election 2024. That saw Nitish dump the RJD and and of course the India Alliance, and he joined hands with the BJP and again became part of its National Democratic Alliance, or NDA. With that move, the BJP thought it had broken the back of the India Bloc, especially after it had engineered a split in the opposition unity in Maharashtra by breaking the Nationalist Congress Party and earlier the Shiv Sena. And they believed that the reservation issue would fade away with these two major political coups. So soon after that, Prime Minister Modi performed the consecration ceremony of the newly built Ram temple in Ayodhya in January, and this received widespread appreciation among the majority Hindu community. So confident was the BJP of winning a third consecutive majority on its own that Prime Minister Modi said that this time the NDA tally would be 400 par or cross 400 plus. This, he said, would enable the BJP and the NDA alliance to take even what he called bigger decisions, which he promised he would do in his third term. But what brought reservations back to center stage was a minor event that happened in Karnataka. Now, just before poll dates were announced in March, the BJP MP, Anant Kumar Hegde, on the campaign trail said getting 400 plus seats in the Lok Sabha was a necessity for the NDA because, as he put it, the constitution has to be amended as the existing constitution was done to oppress the Hindu religion. Now, close quotes on that. The opposition picked up this particular remark and amplified it across the country, saying it exposed the real intent of the BJP, which was to amend the constitution and usher in a Hindutva nation in which all caste-based reservations would be abolished. This included abolishing the 50% reservation permitted for government jobs and educational institutions for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and the other backward classes, or the OBCs, which already existed. Now, as proof of their charge against the BJP, they quoted earlier speeches by Prime Minister Modi, where he had said that for him, there were only 4 castes: the youth, women, the poor, and farmers. Now, this was held out as proof that the BJP and the Prime Minister was out to abolish the caste system across the country, and with it, the reservations. The Congress, in fact, which had adopted the caste census as its main election plank, spearheaded the entire attack. In its manifesto, the Congress party, among other things, promised to abolish the 50% judicial ceiling on reservations so that it could then push or give the OBCs greater job reservations or quotas in the reservation pie. The Congress also pushed for a national caste census along with a socio-economic status census, and this implied that the move was towards not only increasing the quota for OBCs, but also ensuring affirmative action of all weaker sections of the society. The Congress and the opposition went into overdrive, saying that Ambedkar's constitution was under threat by the BJP, and as Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge warned, this could be the end of democracy, the last election before democracy would be destroyed, and the battle was to save democracy. Particularly impacted, the opposition parties claim, would be the SCs, the STs and the OBCs, for whom reservations was equivalent to owning land, and they cited that as it's like taking away land from them. The lukewarm voting in the first two phases that saw an average 4 percentage point drop in turnout came as another warning sign for the BJP. Now, this also tied up very well with one of the main concerns across the country, which is unemployment or joblessness, and the Congress promising it would fill the 3 million vacant jobs in the central government. So all this tied up very neatly, and the opposition began to make it a huge issue, which began to gain traction. The BJP then went into urgent damage control mode. The BJP, of course, does face a dilemma over the caste census and reservations, as it hits at the heart of the quest for a united Hindutva nation. But the BJP's evolution has seen a pragmatic electoral approach which ensured that the OBCs were given adequate representation in Parliament. Analysis by the Center for the Study of Developing Societies, the CSDS, of the 2019 general election saw the BJP's vote share among the OBCs double from 22% in 2009 to almost 34% in 2014 to 44% in 2019. Now, all this was done by what they call social engineering and involving the OBCs as part of their election list, giving them seats and ensuring that they got adequate representation. But now, with the renewed call for the reservation in jobs and other educational institutions, the BJP was in danger of losing that particular vote bank, particularly if it was not able to counter such charges that were being made. So then, the BJP turned the entire reservation issue being raised by the opposition from one of a quota basis and a caste basis into a completely religious one. Prime Minister Modi led the counterattack, and the BJP invoked the Muslim spectre and revived its old charge of appeasement politics being practiced by the Congress. The BJP actually worked on a twin strategy to counter the entire reservations issue. First, it converted what was essentially a battle of castes into a religious one, as I said. The party linked the Congress manifesto and Rahul Gandhi's theme of wealth redistribution to a Muslim-first policy. The Prime Minister attacked Rahul's promised X-ray of India's wealth as a step towards grabbing all assets and rights, and went on to say from the Mangal Sutra of Hindu women to existing caste quotas, the Congress would snatch them and hand it out to the Muslims. Second, the BJP highlighted past actions of a few Congress-led state governments which had pushed for Muslim reservations as part of the quota system, and they said this established a pattern of conduct of the Congress of favoring the Muslims. Now, as the main exhibit or Exhibit A, they pulled out a 2006 statement made by the then Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, claiming that he had said, and this is what the BJP charged him with saying, that Muslims had the first claim on the country's resources. The BJP's strategy of shifting the reservation debate to one of Muslim appeasement had certainly put the Congress on the back foot. On its part, the Congress charged the BJP with distorting, and in quotes, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's statement of 2006 and trying to polarize the electorate along communal lines. The Congress pointed out that there is nothing in the Congress manifesto to suggest affirmative action, including taking Mangal Sutras and handing it to the Muslims, as the PM had claimed. In fact, the Congress document, carefully skirts around the word Muslim altogether. One allusion to Muslims in the Congress manifesto comes indirectly when it promises to implement the 10% quota the BJP government had brought in 2019 that gave legal sanctions to reserve jobs and educational institutions seats for them for the economically weaker sections. The Congress manifesto says it will do so for all caste and communities without discrimination. Now, the term communities is being interpreted and is commonly understood as that including Muslims. The other red flag that the Prime Minister raised was on a purported Muslim-specific clause in the award of government contracts. The Congress counter to that was that all it promised was a safeguard against anyone being unfairly denied such contracts, something it accused the BJP government of doing. The Congress manifesto reads, and I'm quoting from it, "We will ensure that the minorities receive their fair share of opportunities in education, healthcare, public employment, public works contracts, skill development, sports, and cultural activities without discrimination." So all this saw the reservations for Muslim backward classes as central to the debate. This is what the BJP pushed the entire debate from one of a general caste reservations issue to one of specifically accusing the Congress of favoring the Muslims and actually working all this out to give them the reservations in these various government jobs and institutions to that community. While the Congress has hotly denied this, let us just examine what the Constitution says about such reservations. While the Constitution does not permit reservations based on religion, it does not debar quota inclusion on a socio-economic basis for caste groups, including among Muslims. Now, if they are deemed to be backward, many states, including the BJP-ruled ones, have recognized certain backward Muslim communities and awarded them OBC quotas. Some states like Telangana, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh have advocated that Muslims be given a separate quota, but the Supreme Court has often struck down their efforts for violating the 50% limit. Now, after a tangled legal journey since the 1970s, Karnataka allotted 4% in 1994 to the Muslim community. Tamil Nadu has had 3.5% since 2007. Even BJP-ruled states have pushed for quota for Muslim communities that belong to the backward classes. In Haryana, for instance, the Mullah Jats were among the 6 groups allocated a 10% quota in 2016 when the BJP-ruled government, or continues to be in power, when the BJP-ruled government had assumed power in that state. This was along with the Hindus and Sikh Jats, but this provision ran into legal hurdles. Muslims have also been included under the OBC and EBC categories in Bihar since the 1970s. Even Gujarat has 32 rows for Muslim OBCs in its reservation policy. So, the larger point is that Muslims, though not by religion, but because of their backward class classifications, have been given a small part of the reservation in the existing quota reservations, not on the basis of religion, but because they were classified as backward classes that were there. Now, another thorny issue that the BJP is banking on is whether the quota for Muslim OBCs, if it was implemented, would eat into the overall reservation pie. Nothing in the OBC reservation law stipulates that backwardness is to be mapped solely among Hindus. So, there is that clause, and as I explained earlier, many states have used that particular clause. At the same time, politically, this can be a polarizing issue if bias is perceived. Now, a setback for the opposition parties came very recently, just before the 6th phase of voting was to happen, when the Calcutta High Court on May 22nd annulled 8 old executive orders and a legislation that had included 114 groups, of which 106 of them were Muslims, among the other backward classes. And this was done both by the left government that had ruled West Bengal as well as by the TMC headed by Mamata Banerjee. The Prime Minister lost no time in accusing Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee of crossing every limit of what he called vote bank politics. So all this has shown that without doubt, the politics of reservation has dominated the discourse. There is no doubt that reservations coupled with unemployment is a potent issue when it comes to elections. Now, if you recall, in 1989, VP Singh had come to power, pledging among other things, to implement the Mandal Commission report along with using the plank of corruption, and that destroyed Rajiv Gandhi's re-election bid. Now, in election 2024, what was seen as a walkover for the BJP has, in some senses, the reservation issue has put the ruling party on the back foot, and it has become an issue. It has united the opposition. It pushed the BJP's main plank of Viksit Bharat and development somewhat to the back burner and forced it to indulge in polarizing rhetoric. While it did shore up the BJP's faithful votes, it seemed to have resulted in consolidating the Muslim vote behind the opposition. It also brought concerns among some of the majority community, the Hindus, of the BJP overdoing the Muslim bashing. Now, whether all this will have an impact on the outcome of the elections will only be known on June 4th. And I'm going to leave it at that because we are very close to the results being announced. And so let us see whether the reservation issue did play a major role in boosting the opposition prospects, or did it result in the BJP consolidating its support and winning handsomely in election 2024. For more details of this important debate, do read the cover story in India Today done by my colleague Sunil Menon. Thank you for being with me in this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me next week. Nothing But the Truth.